The great comic writer E.B. White once said, "Analyzing humor is like dissecting a frog. Few people are interested, and the frog dies of it." But if not for analyzing whatever written constitutes as a joke worthy of laughter, there is an attempt needed to look at the cinematic language that accompanies that very writing. It's a shame that Indian movies, specifically Bollywood, who have been the winner of comedic metrics in their prime, are no longer the same. Nothing made me laugh harder than this scene between Amir and Salman, or the chemistry between Govinda and Kadir Khan, or this scene in Ishq. If there's a genre Bollywood had complete domination upon once upon a time, it was comedy. But lately it's been like watching an out-of-shape heavyweight boxer who's about to retire trade blows, none of them landing.
इसने जेंडर का टेंडर नहीं भरा.
Well, why is that? If you look closely, things started to go wrong towards the start of the 2010s, and now towards the start of the 20s, there's barely a comedy-centric movie that made me laugh out and out. A certain attribution can be made to comedic writing itself and the influence of PC culture that restricts what we can and cannot make fun of.
By their cell phone, I need to have it with me because people are so important.
Right.
You know, I said, well, they don't seem very important the way you scroll through them like a gay French king. You know, just there's a creepy PC thing out there that really bothers me.
But that's not the case in my view. Mr. Bean was a series that came out exactly 30 years ago, and without using any words, it was an out-and-out laugh riot that we still revere to this day. Comedy is not restrictive, it's expansive. It often touches the nerve that pains the most to release our personal anxieties. To say, hey, maybe my life is bad, but not as bad as that person. Comedic movies provide a kind of catharsis that stays with you long after the movie is over. But more and more, the only word you hear associated with modern comedic movies is cringe. There are no ways to force the audience to laugh when you want them to. We are hardwired to understand when a comedic beat is genuine and when it's lacking any sense of skilled writing and direction. Now, comedy writing and the subject being written about can come from anywhere. Dissecting what can and cannot constitute as comedy would be killing the frog. But there are principles one needs to remember. The first being, use depth. Too often in modern comedies, there is an acute lack of using the Z-axis to show things happening on screen. Everything either happens laterally or vertically. Everyone comes to stand in a single horizontal line to avoid appearing in the bokeh part of the camera. Earlier in cinema, shooting on film and hand-stitched editing meant more adherence to wider shots that crammed in more information without having to cut. That meant having information displayed to the audience in the foreground and the background in the same shot, which also gave way to a more natural positioning of characters to each other, and that also meant having the action and the reaction in the same shot. Which brings me to my second point. Editing matters.
And so I'm opening for Jerry in front of like 1,200 or 2,500 people, and people are applauding bits, and I had never encountered that, and I didn't know how to handle it. So I asked Jerry what to do, and he said, you stay in the bit. You stay in the bit that they're reacting to. If you're angry, and that's why they're applauding, you stay in that energy.
There's a concept in filmmaking called ASL, or average shot length, which is the amount of time on average which a shot lasts in a movie. This is calculated by dividing the runtime by the number of cuts. Over the years, the ASL of your average movie has gone down from 12.5 seconds in 1930 to just 2.5 seconds today. Such rapid cuts take away a lot of energy from a scene. Longer takes give room for us to breathe and take in a scene, and even after the punchline is delivered, we are able to stay in the energy of the joke. A good way to do that would be to use zoom lenses.
One could almost say use a.
What did you say?
A director that does a good job with that is Tarantino.
You will?
See, Tarantino knows when to shoot wide and hold a shot to make even something violent turn funny. But just as important it is to know when to use something, it is also important to know when to not use something.
You didn't mention kneecap.
Which brings me to my third point. Reserve the close-ups. Now the extreme close-up is a shot that can work wonders in drama because every time you cut into a close-up, you're telling the audience to take a good look at this. But a wider shot in comedy lets us soak in the environment and the relationship of the characters to one another. If two characters are talking, be very careful to cut to a close-up. Comedy is a medium that requires information to bounce off every character in the shot.
तुमको कैसे पता चला चाचा गेस्ट हाउस में आई? तो किस गेस्ट हाउस में तो क्या बाथरूम में रहेगा? क्या बात करता है पागल आदमी?
The close-ups need to be reserved for either very important emotional moments or better yet only reactions, never for trivial talk.
ए लक्ष्मण जल्दी आ, नाना बोलने वाला है.
Which brings me to number 4. Characters aren't stand-up comedians. The rise of stand-up comedy has given way to stand-ups often writing for comedies or comedic writers being inspired by stand-ups, which has resulted in an uneven amalgamation of stand-up and cinematic comedy, where scenes come to a screeching halt for characters to deliver a heavy monologue or dialogue meant to make us laugh.
Sometimes I feel I'm the god. कभी-कभी लगता है कि आप उन्हीं भगवान हैं.
Characters in a movie aren't comedians. They're people trying to live their everyday lives while trying to achieve their next goal.
मैंने भी म्युनिसिपल कमिश्नर को फोन करके तेरा ये फैमिली रूम और ये ढाबा नहीं गिरा दिया तो मेरा भी
क्या नाम भूल गया क्या अपना ही?
Characters in these movies are often always trying to say a funny line or falling into some danger, which we don't like either because a tragedy diverted is only funny when the character is unaware of it, or a tragedy inflicted only when a character is deserving of it. A stand-up type of comedy takes away from physical and visual comedy, which is sorely missing today. There's no visual gags, no subtle insert shots that connect to the larger story. Every character is a blunt comedic device, meant to say whatever the writer finds funny. Which brings me to the last and the most important point. Not everyone can be the comic relief. As more and more movies come out, there seems to be a pressure to churn out more comedic hits per line, resulting in writers writing almost every character as a source of comedy. Of course, when everyone is trying to tell a joke all the time, how could the audience not laugh? This is a huge misconception. Comedy works better with contrast. We need characters to act as the standard version of ourselves. This is something nobody did better than Qadir Khan. Of course, everyone has this memory of him being this great source of comedy. But if you take a look back, you'll find he really did the most comedic thing, or say the funny line. His voice was often the most rational one, reacting as a normal person would to the absurdity.
ये तुम हमें कहाँ ले आए हो पापा जी?
तुम्हारे बुरे वक्त के पास.
ये क्या कह रहे हो पापा जी?
पापा जी नहीं.
These points alone can't make up for bad writing. You can't dictate what someone writing the scripts find funny and what the viewer doesn't. But they can act as a cushion to blunt the blow of badly written jokes. Cinema is equal part writing and execution. If one fails, at least sometimes the other can pick up the pace. And you'd be surprised to see how well a well-crafted comedy could do at the box office. That is when once the theaters are open up again, of course.
Hey guys, I hope you liked that one. I had a ton of fun making it, and if you did like it, do press the like button, subscribe button, share button, and see you guys in the next one.